Esau, the son of Isaac and Rebekah, was the elder twin brother of Jacob Israel, who purchased Esau's birthright for a mess of red pottage, in some sources lentil soup. From the original word used to denote red, Esau, who was said to have been red when born, acquired the alternative name Edom, by which definition his descendant Edomites became known. Esau was additionally said to be hairy, and this is reminiscent of Enkidu, the man of nature, in the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh. Some writers have suggested that the word seer, which was translated to hairy in respect of Esau, should perhaps have been seer, a synonym for Edom meaning red, but such an error by the early writers is unlikely, particularly since the hairy definition was also applied in Arabian and Jewish law to other characters, such as Ham, Lilith and the Queen of Sheba. When the Constitution of Ethiopia was drawn up in 1955, Emperor Haile Selassie was detailed as having descended from Solomon and Sheba offspring King Menelek, who featured in the 13th century Kebra Nagast, the Book of the Glory of the Kings. Menelek's queen was Makeda, who was also described as hairy, but in this context the translated word is better explained as hairy in the likeness of a bright comet, a hirsute wandering star. The wandering stars were, of course, the biblical race of Cain and his wife Luluwa, and the hairy definition was often used to denote prominent dynasts of Luluwa's succession from the Anunnaki king Nergal and his queen, Ereshkigal. Esau had dragon heritage by way of his wife Bashemath, the daughter of Abraham's son Ishmael, and his wife Mahalath of Egypt. Mahalath was also known as Nefru-Sobek, a daughter of Pharaoh Amenevet II and granddaughter of Senusret I, the half-brother of Abraham's wife Sarah. The daughter of Esau and Mahalath was Igrath, whose own daughter by Pharaoh Amenevet III was Sobeknefru, Dragon Queen of Egypt circa 1785-1782 BC. Sobeknefru, Sobeknefru, was the last ruler of Egypt's 12th dynasty, and her name meant beautiful of the god Sobek. Sobek was the mighty crocodile, the very spirit of the Mesa, whose great temple was erected at Kim Faris by Queen Sobeknefru's father. It is generally reported that Sobeknefru had no male heir, and because of this a new 13th dynasty began after her death. However, since the Egyptian royal inheritance was held in the female line, new dynasties often sprang from the marriage of an heiress to a male of another family. Such appears to have been the case in this instance, and the 13th dynasty saw the continuing reigns of the Sobek pharaohs from Sobeknefru I to Sobeknefru IV. Prior to this, Queen Sobeknefru had formalized the dragon court of Ankh-Khonsu, establishing a firm base for the priestly pursuits associated with the scientific teachings of Thoth which had prevailed from the second dynasty of Nimrod's grandson King Raneb. The Hyksos Kings were Amorite descendants of Ham, and as such would have been of a strain related to the early second dynasty, perhaps even to the 12th dynasty of Queen Sobeknefru. One way or another, they challenged the 17th dynasty of Thebes, and in matters of warfare they introduced the horse, the chariot and the compound bow, none of which had formerly been used in Egypt. These things were, however, previously apparent in Troy, from where the Sea Kings, those of Amu, and their followers spread into the Mediterranean seaboard lands after Troy was devastated by fallout from the Mount Santorini eruption in 1624 BC. It is likely, therefore, that the Hyksos, who were also called the foreign rulers, were of Trojan origin. Tuthmosis III, who established the famous alchemical mystery school of the White Brotherhood of the Therapeutate, from which an eventual branch established the Essene community at Qumran. This original school was operated by the priests of Papa, the god of metallurgists, architects and masons. Papa was regarded as the great Vulcan of Egypt, and the high priest of Papa was the designated Great Master Artificer. Notwithstanding the intervention of the Hyksos Kings, Egypt had from the outset of its first dynasty, circa 3050 BC, been a unified nation comprising the separate upper, southern, and lower, northern, kingdoms. Each kingdom had its own regalia: a white crown, Hedjet, for Upper Egypt, and a red crown, deshret, for Lower Egypt, while the double crown, shmty, incorporated both. Additionally, the lotus and the vulture were symbolic of the White Kingdom, while the papyrus plant and the cobra symbolized the Red Kingdom. Each of the kingdoms had its own principal stone pillar, a spiritual, umbilical cord between the priests and the gods. In the city of Heliopolis, Lower Egypt, was the ancient pillar of Anu, whose name is reminiscent of the great Sumerian god Anu, father of Enki and Enlil. Its counterpart at Thebes, Upper Egypt, was called Imu-Shamar, which means, simply, southern pillar. These two eastward-facing pillars, which existed at the time of unification, were revered by the Tuthmosis therapeutate, and were the prototypes for the two eastern porch pillars of Solomon's Temple of Jerusalem some 2,000 years after the unification of Egypt. The Jerusalem pillars still feature in modern Freemasonry as Jachin, to establish, and Boaz, in strength 1 Kings 7:21. In Egypt the pillars were symbols of unity and of a concept known as Maut, which defined a level and just foundation. This ideal of righteous judgment was synonymous with divine kingship and with the Hebrew Malkut, and not surprisingly Maut, the goddess of truth and law, was said to be the sister of Thoth. Her weighing of truth in the balance was conducted with a feather, and truth was identified with gold, the most noble of metals. Irrespective of the Bible's dismissal of the Egyptian descent from Esau through Queen Sobeknefru, the Old Testament writers did acknowledge the Lilithian heritage of the line to his wife Bashemath. It is explained that Esau's heirs by Bashemath and his other wives became the dukes of Edom. They are cited in Genesis 36:31, as the kings that reigned in the land of Edom before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. Scholars of Hebrew literature make the specific point that in listing the legitimate dukes of Edom, Edomiah, the Genesis compilers define 12 individual dukedoms, equivalent in number to the 12 tribes of Israel. Also, there were 12 princes of nations given as the sons of Abraham's son Ishmael. Although the tribes of Israel are generally well known, these other influential groups of 12 have been strategically ignored, albeit the families of Ishmael and Esau were defined as hybrid dukes and princes. The Ishmaelites emerge as the 12 tribes of Syro-Arabia, while the Muslim tradition reveres Ishmael and Abraham as the joint founders of the Holy House at Mecca. Esau's Edomites were destined, in turn, to inherit the kingdom of Edomiah as the dragons, kings, and owls, queens of eternity. There is a prophecy in the book of Isaiah fitting this situation. They shall possess it forever, from generation to generation shall they dwell therein. The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose.